Land Regulation Committee to order. First item on the agenda is public comment on any matter not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on to introductions. I'm the chair of the committee, Supervisor Mary Collard. To my right is Supervisor Dennis O'Laughlin and Supervisor El Matano. And also we have the student member, Sam Fisher. The Director of Planning and Development is here, Todd Violante, and the Zoning Administrator, Roger Lane. The procedures for tonight is that this is a ZLR committee work meeting. Public hearings have been held at previous meetings for the items listed on the agenda. The committee will not be taking public testimony on these agenda items. However, committee members may call upon persons to speak on an agenda item if there are any questions or concerns. When a petition is called, county staff will update the committee on the status of the petition. The committee members may have concerns or questions after discussion, and a decision may be rendered. If a zoning petition is acted upon, it will be placed on the next county board meeting for action, which is next Thursday night. If a conditional use permit is acted upon, it is the county's final action. And the next ZLR committee meeting is January 23rd. Consideration of minutes. We have the minutes from our November 28th committee meeting.
I move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the November 28th, 2017. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the minutes of November 28th, 2017 are approved. We have the minutes of December 11th, 2017.
I move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of December 11th, 2017. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. Our first petition is rezone 11,165, Bullseye LLC in the town of Rutland. Roger?
This petition was postponed at the July 25th Zoning and Land Regulation Committee. It was postponed due to the proposal not meeting the town comprehensive plan. Since that time, the town has approved an amendment to their comprehensive plan, allowing commercial development in this section of the town. And this section is located just east of the village of Oregon on 138 that goes to Stoughton. So that entire area has been allocated for commercial development. There were several concerns that staff had raised. The first one being the wetlands. There is a ribbon of wetlands going through this property. The applicant has submitted a wetland delineation report showing where the wetlands are. They do need to cross this wetland. There is a small ridge. It's a 10-foot pathway that's there. DNR has looked at that, and they could actually widen that to access the majority of the land. Another item that has changed is that they expanded the zoning district boundaries. The original was approximately 4.5 acres, and now they are requesting that the entire land, it's about 18.5 acres, 19 acres, for C2 commercial development. We have received town action. The town has approved this petition with conditions, with a limited amount of range of commercial uses. There was some confusion with regards to the permitted uses and the conditional uses, so the town took a look at it the second time, and that's what is in front of you tonight, the permitted uses that were approved by the town, and the ones that are grayed out or struck through, they're the ones that they would like prohibited. So limiting the land uses to a specific set of land uses. The third most important item is that state highway access. Since this petition was submitted, we stated that if you're going to have 19 acres of commercial development, you need to take a look at how you're going to access 138, the state highway. State Highway 138 is a controlled access highway, so it has very limited access. Currently, the only access to that property is for the small golf range office, and that's it. So we have been in contact with Wisconsin DOT. We had a meeting with Scott Hinkle out at the site. He shared some concerns with full development of 19 acres that the intersection will definitely need improvements. And one of the things is that when land uses start to increase on this property, certain improvements are going to need to be done to 138, but we really don't know what until a traffic study is done. So right at this time, we're still working with DOT to come up with a plan so they're comfortable with allowing development to occur. Staff has also suggested that a concept plan be created to show what full build-out will look like. That has just been emailed to staff today, and we really didn't have any time to look at that, but we do have a copy of it. It basically looks like 4 multi-use buildings will be located on the property, and then a set of mini warehouses that are next to Highway 14. I guess that's somewhat of the plan. Okay. So there is a proposal. It looks, there is a regional detention basin, so it looks pretty good for this. But right now, we haven't really boiled down all this stuff. The DOT access is almost complete. The concept plan has been submitted. The list of land uses are almost, we have a list here, but we'd like to tweak them a little bit. And the wetlands have been addressed. So that they have made pretty good progress so far, but they're here tonight to tell you any more progress that has been made with this project.
We have Wade Wise and Tara Pearson here wishing to speak in support, and just hold on a second. And also registering in support is Steve Suter. So, did you have anything else?
No, staff is recommending that this be postponed another 2 weeks till we hammer out an agreement with DOT. There'll probably be a deed restriction placed on the property that informs everybody that access is limited, and when a land use or a building goes in here, they're going to need DOT approval prior to any zoning permit being issued, so that we could ensure that the access to 138 is safe. And eventually, with 19 acres built out, it may need, maybe a roundabout or acceleration, deceleration lanes, maybe a turn lane in the center, but all of that is subject to the traffic impact study.
And you think you'd hear within 2 weeks?
Well, we'll have the agreement. One of the things is that Tara, what's your name? Pearson. Tara Pearson owns Wisconsin Best. They would like to construct just one building right here for the time being. All the future buildings are yet to be determined who's going to build those or purchase those, but she would like to get going as soon as possible on this. Scott Hinkle did not see that as an issue. With the access, maybe an acceleration, deceleration lane just needs to be done, but I believe Wise Engineering is working with Scott Hinkle, Scott Hinkle right now, and figuring that all out.
I don't know who went first. So Supervisor O'Loughlin?
Roger, 2 questions. DNR's comments on the bridge over that water area,
Mm-hmm.
are they okay with that?
Yes, and one of the things is that that bridge needs to be widened.
Okay.
With the widening of the bridge, the wetlands will need to be filled in a little bit, so they'll need to rezone out of wetlands. We did talk to the DNR, and it falls underneath the general permit, and they did not see any issue with that. It's basically that wetland complex there. It's all the water basically in this area is finding the low point down here. There may be a spring here, and then all the water goes to the north. So it's just the start of a wetland complex.
Okay. Second question. I sense there's a sense of urgency on the first building. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. Can we approve that portion of the parcel or restrict the approval to that one building, limiting it to that building until such time as DOT, ingress, egress, further expansion is explored and defined and accepted?
That's one of the things that we're working out, and we presented that to the DOT, and they suggested that a restriction be placed on the property to advise everybody that prior to future development of this property, that they need the traffic impact study and the necessary improvements need to be made, before occupancy.
Outside of the first one or included in the first building?
No, I think they were very comfortable with the first one because it's going to be a low traffic volume.
That helps me.
And yeah, and it's similar to what was going on there. So they went, okay, that maybe a little tapered flares and stuff like that, but they said it wasn't going to be a really big deal.
Okay, all right.
Supervisor Miles?
Well, just to comment on that, though, it sounds like it's more, what is needed is more of a plan on how to proceed with future development, not necessarily having a set answer on what's going to happen with 138, correct? That you're not, at this point in time, going to be determining whether you're doing roundabout or deceleration.
Yeah, and as this property develops, DOT is going, every person is going to be working intimately with DOT to make sure it's safe before the next phase goes in, or the next building goes in.
Okay, so in the next couple of weeks, what we're doing is sort of getting that framework of how that communication.
An agreement in place between the owner of the land and the developer to ensure that the access to 138 is being looked at prior to any future development.
Okay. And then my couple of questions were, first being with the wetland filling, now that this is given the amount of space, well, if we're just looking at one proposed building site at this point in time, I don't know what the square footage of that is from this distance here, but I don't know, would a stormwater permit be required for that?
Yes, there's going to be a stormwater management, and Wise Engineering could, they've been working on the development, and they could probably address those.
The thing I want to be certain of, so either can respond to this, I want to be certain that with any filling, that we're not losing connectivity to any downstream wetlands, that there is still
Yes.
the conveyance of water for that purpose. And will there be a determination, you mentioned there might be a spring, will that determination be made soon?
I took an initial look at that, and we're going to consider this end portion here a navigable stream. So
And that's
shoreline regulations are going to control within 300 feet. They have the wetland boundaries, they have been all delineated, they have the setbacks for the wetlands, and also they're going to need a Chapter 30 permit probably with the DNR to ensure that crossing or widening of that crossing. So I believe Wise Engineering could inform you more on that.
Right, and now with that being my final question, with that being state highway and if whatever infrastructure improvements they determine are needed for future development or in response to future development, is the town able to impose a special assessment on property owners?
The agreement will be worded in such a way that the developer will need to pay for necessary improvements.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Other questions for Roger or any of the petitioners? Sam, go ahead.
Do you guys have any problems with the permitted uses on the sheet?
No, I think all the permitted uses actually fall under what we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? How about a motion to postpone to?
So moved.
Thank you.
Sorry you had to wake me up.
Second.
Okay, and you understand why, 'cause I think you look like you're ready for a presentation, but if you want to come back in 2 weeks, because then we'll have more
Can we get
information.
the opportunity to elaborate on what Roger stated and just where we've come over the course of the past 2-3 months?
You could, but do you want to just do it in 2 weeks? Because
I think our preference would be to do it now, just because I think all the questions that you're asking, from my perspective, have been addressed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for postponement. I would like to hear what Mr. Wise has to say.
I'll just put these here for reference. They're obviously up on the screen. Thanks for the opportunity, members of the committee. My name is Wade Wise, Wiser Engineering. We were brought on to assist the owner-developer of this project here in the fall. In working with Roger, the main things that we are assisting with are water resources, the wetlands, the stormwater management component of the project, the traffic, the access to State Trunk Highway 138, and then also, as it has evolved, basically a concept plan to kind of tell the story and the vision for the entirety of the property. We've heard from Roger, as well as from the meeting minutes, that that's critical. And we heard that on site with representatives from the DOT. So if I can tackle each one individually, I guess first the water resources. We did have a wetland delineation done by an assured delineator. So the wetland that was delineated and surveyed is the ratified DNR wetland. So that has been completed and that effort's been submitted to DNR. And accompanying that, we also have submitted the DNR general waterway and wetland fill permit, which have been approved at this point. So we have crossed the hurdle of the wetland impacts, the fill of the wetlands, and the delineation of the wetlands. Those are behind us at this point from a DNR perspective. As it relates to other water resources, stormwater management, we've kept the watersheds in their current drainage locations consistent with the drainage patterns. And when I say that, the first building will drain into the first building and the imminent building that the developer, Tara, would like to construct, would drain to its own bioretention and stormwater facility prior to discharging into the wetland. And then also we've looked at a regional concept for stormwater management for the greater 19 acres. Both of those efforts have been finalized. We're at the point where we're ready to submit to Jeremy and Josh and the folks at Dane County Water Resources. So I like to liken stormwater management to traffic, in that we've taken the approach of taking a look at the first building, we've analyzed it and came up with a solution for it. We've also taken a look at the full 19 acres, analyzed it and said, you know, when you build this, you've got to do this pond. So it's kind of the 2 ponds. We've taken that same concept and we've now applied it to the traffic position, the access to State Trunk Highway 138. In November, we submitted an access request to the DOT just for the single building. The concept plan was still in thought, still in process. We were trying to get the single building going as quickly as possible. As Roger mentioned, on January 3rd, we met with Scott Hinkle and the DOT out on site. More or less from that communication, it was verbalized to us that basically the access permit could be granted for the first building, and any additional development as part of this concept plan needed to be studied. We recognize that. A traffic impact analysis is needed for that. So having been a part of other projects similar to this, where we have done a traffic impact analysis, we look at horizon years. This development and the concept plan that was just today sent to Roger and not had a lot of time to digest, it's a vision. There are potential users that have reached out to Tara that they would like this location, but at the same time we recognize limitations due to water service, sanitary, basically basic utilities. What we see as a concept plan for flex building permitted uses that are in the general area, at this location, we presented in a concept plan that we don't think there's a whole lot of change to. Inevitably, a concept plan is just that, it's a concept. But at the same time, we don't see a whole lot of changes to that in that it's flex space. Single users, flex space, things of those nature that could be utilized on this property. So with that, we've been asked to proceed with and are prepared to prepare a traffic impact analysis that addresses what that second stormwater facility will be, if you will, to State Trunk Highway 138. We know what we've got to do for this first building. It's a standard intersection. And we will identify, as part of this traffic impact analysis, what would happen to 138 as additional development, one building, two building, or the entirety happens. And we'll clearly itemize those out for the DOT. So our intent and our hope tonight is that we've answered the questions that were out there as it related to water resources, stormwater management, and wetlands. We think we're past that. We've presented a concept plan that is just that. It's a concept plan and still needs more work. Could change a number of times, but again, in context for what the site is, the use, the density is not going to be a drastic change. So the only remaining obstacle that we feel is this DOT approval, and we recognize it. So what we would ask for tonight, in reference to the staff report, it seemed like the major holdup would be the DOT, and rightfully so. But what we would request tonight would be conditional approval of the rezone of the entirety of the property, putting the faith back in your staff, Roger, and the DOT to hammer out this agreement so that Tara can move forward. And we can push forward with this traffic impact analysis and know that we have substantial completion of most of these materials. So I think if we came back in 2 weeks, certainly the DOT, we're not going to have a traffic impact analysis done. The DOT is not going to have time to review it. I think what we're going to find is we would be asking the same thing 2 weeks from now. We'd be suggesting that we've made further progress, we've hammered out an agreement, but again, we're asking for conditional approval upon satisfying staff and DOT as it relates to the full 19 acres. So, sorry to be long-winded, but I guess that's kind of where we've been and where we'd like to go and what we'd like to request of you tonight.
Questions? Supervisor Machado.
Just one clarification. There's, in terms of the wetlands, the fill, what I thought I heard was, but it wasn't explicitly stated, that the fill was for the bridge to access. That, can you state that the buildings would not be in the wetland area?
That is correct. The fill would be just to widen the driveway, the path that goes over through the wetlands currently, to allow for better access, connectivity. The buildings, the grading, the impervious surface associated with the building, there is no fill to the wetland due to those components.
Are there questions for Mr. Wise? Anything?
Well, Roger, you had suggested 2 weeks. I'm generally not real comfortable with conditional approval of zoning.
We have been requesting a concept plan for almost, well, since the petition was submitted and even before the petition was submitted in July. We have just received it today. When I take a look at this concept plan, I see a lot of flex buildings. I would like to talk to the landowner with regards to the expectation of having outdoor display items or keeping everything inside. There is the list from the town of Rutland is rather extensive. I think to just get the flavor of it, just to say that anything could be stored outside, displayed and everything, I think might be problematic, or how that's going to be controlled. But I see all these flex buildings, you know, if they have just crap all over the place, it's going to be run down. I also want to talk to them about signage on this, and also talk with the DOT on what type of covenant can be put on this. If they have a CAN covenant that they are able to use, so that everybody's comfortable with the safety of 138.
Can all that be done in 2 weeks?
I believe so. You know, I want this to happen as soon as possible, but getting the information, we just got this from the town of Rutland, I think Thursday or Friday, and or maybe even Monday, I don't know. But all the stuff that we need to process has just come in, and I just need a little time to get it organized, because such things as prohibiting billboard signs, this is along US 14 and State Highway 138. So we want to make sure that details like that could be part of the conditions of approval. So it's almost done, but just need 2 weeks to clean it up.
Other questions? And that's where I'm coming from, is I appreciate your request and your presentation this evening, but I'm not comfortable not postponing it. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of postponement say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it's postponed. So thank you. Okay, next is rezone petition 11,212, Stephen Chauncey in the town of Cross Plains.
Yeah, this petition was postponed at the November 28th Zoning and Land Regulation Committee due to no town action. Since that time, the town of Cross Plains has approved this petition with no conditions.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And it's approved. Next is rezone petition 11,223, Jacob Rippon in the town of Albion.
This petition was postponed at the December 11th meeting due to no representation. The landowner was stuck in O'Hara Airport. Since that time,
That's me.
he has
I'm gonna come back.
managed to get out of O'Hara Airport,
Yeah.
and he's here. The town has taken action on this. They have approved with no conditions. There is no remnant A1 exclusive property, so everything is doesn't need a deed restriction. Everything's going to be zoned for residential development, and there's just 2 lots there.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Yes, Supervisor Newton.
I just wanted to offer empathy, having been held hostage by Delta Airlines recently.
So you know the feeling. Yeah. I was actually stuck in Palm Springs because they wouldn't
Let's
take
get
the
on.
plane off until they knew it could land.
Well, that was rough. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
We're not done yet.
Oh, you're not done yet.
We ought to vote before
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it's approved.
All right,
I
thank
just
you.
wanted to be
Thank
sure
you.
you saw that.
Have a great evening.
Me too. Next is rezone petition 11,230.
This petition was postponed at the December 11th meeting due to public opposition. The neighbor was concerned with allowing additional residential development in her neighborhood. Since that time, staff have reviewed the alternate locations of the proposed lots. The original 82 acres Swenson Farm fronts on State Highway 138, which is a controlled access highway, so they will not allow any residential accesses along that. The lots have been located on the only other roadway, which is Sunrise Road. It is in the less productive soils of the entire farm, and it appears that the lots have been appropriately placed in conformance with the town plan policies.
And did you say the town approved?
Yes, the town has approved, conditioned upon prohibiting further residential development on the remaining A1 exclusive lands. And staff suggests deed restriction.
We have a motion to approve
Second?
and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it is approved. I assume we don't have anything else except for the committee update, reports to the committee.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if you would like, I would like to go over to update the committee on the comprehensive revision to the Dane County zoning ordinance. So things have been going along very well. The subcommittee has done their work and created a wonderful product. It's the October 5th version of the proposed zoning ordinance. We have that on our website, and the next step that we're doing is going down to each town and talking with town officials, and we're giving them this summary. So the town officials are warming up to the fact that the zoning code is proposed to change. So I'd like to go over the highlights of it, if everybody's okay with that.
You'll go swiftly, I'm sure.
Yes. So this is the first ever comprehensive revision. The 1950 revision wasn't a comprehensive revision, and it did not allow towns to opt out. This time, because it is a comprehensive revision, every town has an opportunity to opt out of county zoning.
Or opt back in.
Or opt back in, yes. There's the subcommittee members: Dennis O'Loughlin, Nikki Jones, Mary Haley from the town of Pleasant Springs. She was the chair. Jim Ellickson, town of Vermont. Kathy Spillsticker. She worked with DNR on. Yes, I know.
Yeah, you said Mary
Cassie.
Haley was chair of Pleasant Springs?
Mary Haley was the town chair
Okay,
of
thank you.
Pleasant Springs.
Yeah.
Kathy Peelsticker did a lot with ag preservation. We had farmer representative Jim Heck, and then Justin Temple was the building industry. So we did have a good cross-section reviewing all the changes. It took about a year. There's about 250 changes or suggested amendments, and they all went through the subcommittee. This is a timeline. Basically, we did all the work. We have the proposed ordinance drafted. Now we're going out to the towns. We have visited approximately half of the towns so far, and getting a very good response. Everybody says it's well thought out. They don't have any questions. They don't have any major concerns. So things are going just fine. The next wave that's going to be happening February, April, May will be informing the public. So we're going to each town again and informing the public. Some towns want the entire town to be notified through postcards. Other ones just want a notice in the paper. So we're leaving it up to the town to decide how they want to treat their constituents, because they pretty much know best, and we're having them all over the place. So we're going to let them decide how they want to inform the public. Then probably about June, it'll come to the proposed ordinance, is proposed to come to this body for a public hearing. I'm sure there'll be some changes made to it once the draft is revised. Hopefully it'll be adopted by this, recommend adoption by this committee, and the county board adopt it. That gives the towns 3 options, and they have to choose one of these options within a year. Adopt a new code and have the county administer it. Not adopt the code, adopt one of their own and have someone else administer it, or do nothing at all and have no zoning in their town. So once we get to that point, I get all the town's attention because they ask me, do we have to make a choice? Yes, you have to. What stayed the same, there's basically agriculture, residential, and commercial districts. All the existing legal land uses will continue. Mostly all the same land uses are permitted by right in all the zoning districts. Basically, we're changing the label on the zoning districts, and we're consolidating some of the zoning districts to make it more simpler. What's changed? Basically, instead of A1 exclusive, it's going to be called farmland preservation. So that is the major item. Other ones, instead of rural homes, it'll be rural residential. The reason why we chose not to just have keep the zoning districts, it would be having an awkward conversation in the future on describing old A2 and new A2. Now we could say, oh, it's the A2 zoning district or the rural mixed zoning district. So that change is quite significant because we know what code people are talking about in the transition. A conditional use permit section has been added. So it basically lists it's a cafeteria style of conditional use permits. It's a tool for the towns to use to pick and choose what conditions they would like to place on a conditional use permit. And the list is handy there because the goal is to mitigate any potential nuisances, and they have a selection to choose from. The A2 and the rural home zoning district have been consolidated because they're really pretty much the same. We just consolidate them into large rural lots. So as we're taking a look at lots outside of the ag preservation area, you have large ag lots, you have medium ag lots, you have large residential lots, and you have smaller residential lots. That's basically what's out there. We didn't need a whole bunch. The 2 commercial zoning districts, B1 and C1, have been consolidated into one. Basically, we're going to have 2 zoning districts, one general commercial and one heavy commercial. The general commercial, you have your business activities inside the building, and that's what I'm going to talk about with Woolsey LLC. And the second one, heavy commercial, that's business activities inside the building and outside the building. So it's pretty simple. If you want everything indoors, one zoning district. If you want kind of busyness stuff and retail and outdoor display and auto sales and stuff like that, and more intense land use with lights, you'd go heavy commercial. Also, we added a hamlet district. We find that our zoning districts are very difficult to deal with when you're in a compact area, in a hamlet. So we've designed a zoning district to allow a lot of flexibility, 0 lot lines, and a greater mix of uses. So you could have single family and multifamily. You could have just mixed land uses. It's just separated in 2 areas, primary residential area, and then you're going to have a mixed use that has retail, commercial, wholesale, residential, and so it gives it a little bit of flavor. And that's only in the hamlets that we have in Dane County.
So are those being created to basically be able to maintain and move forward with the existing hamlets?
That's
or
correct.
Does it contemplate that new hamlets could be proposed.
I don't see that happening.
Because then, I mean, it seems to me going forward, you'd be using something like planned unit development, no?
Yeah, we'd be using planned unit development. We wouldn't be using Hamlet in any other cases except in the the existing Hamlet areas, because they're having difficulties redeveloping or just sustaining their what they have. What has changed is undesirable conditional uses in A2. A lot of problems with the towns. They didn't want to zone anything to A2 because of the associated conditional uses. You had salvage yards, landfills, mineral extraction, salvage recycling centers, so you had some really nasty stuff. We took all that nasty stuff out and put it in a different zoning district. And it's important because the latest legislation, the Homeowners Bill of Rights, has language that says no municipality can deny a conditional use permit. They can only put reasonable conditions on it. So we have our laundry list of conditions that we have, and we're getting all the nasty uses into a different zoning category. So if you wanted very intense land use, you're going to have to rezone rather than that conditional use permit. So they have weakened the conditional use permit denial significantly. The land uses are going to be simplified. Basically, we're going to have indoor entertainment. That could be as a bar, a restaurant, a theater. Same thing. You have a bunch of people coming into a parking lot. They go in, spend some time in a building, come out, have a bunch of noise, leave. Retail is going indoor retail. We're going to have indoor professional services. That would be the same as listing barber, watchmaker, massage. All those would be personal and professional services. So it gives that, it kind of simplifies the business activities.
Okay, so under a current ordinance, we have pretty specific lists.
Yep.
Which I guess has its pluses and minuses. And one of the things that happens now is if it's use isn't listed, it's prohibited. So do you anticipate that this could create some more headaches for you for interpreting something as not being?
I've used this system in the past in other municipalities, and it works out quite well. It really...
So it's not too subjective.
No, and it basically breaks down the business activity into the potential nuisances, because any retail store is going to pretty much have the same stuff. Professional services, whether it's a masseuse or a hair salon, something like that, it's all pretty much personal and professional services is 9 to 5. You know, you hear crickets at 8 p.m. That's pretty much it. Indoor commercial entertainment, that has a lot of different stuff that could go for long hours. There are going to be conditional use permits, especially outdoor commercial entertainment. But it works out quite well because you look at it and you can perceive what the land use is going to be. Yeah, there's only 2 commercial districts that I talked about. Limited family business has been expanded to a lot of the zoning districts. So if you own an acre of land, you're going to have the ability to have a limited family business. When it gets below an acre, that's when they start being prohibited. New land uses have been added. Accessory dwelling units. This is a huge interest when we surveyed all the people. Having a small living space that's separated from the primary living space to either put your children in, put your parents in, put your assistants in, or rent it out because you can't make house payments. So that is a granny flat. We talked about having detached buildings, but the committee chose to have them attached, so they can't be sold. And one of the conditions will be you can't sell it as a separate unit. They do have limitations, 800 square feet and 2 bedrooms. So,
And a comment on that is that the realtors and the builders agreed with us on that,
yeah,
because they were here for that.
Well,
Yeah.
something I voiced in my understanding too, I thought was important to have, and I'm glad to see it. And I work with an organization to help Madison formulate their ADU ordinance, or the zoning ordinance. The challenge has been having lenders, or having
They aren't going to.
comparables for how
Yeah.
you value that.
we have also addressed Airbnbs and also indoor commercial entertainment such as party barns. They're not going to be like ag entertainment anymore, unless it's at part of an active farm, and that we have clarified that. We're getting rid of the substandard A1 exclusive parcels. There's probably, I'm going to have to say about 400 substandard A1 exclusive parcels. They were created in the 1980s when A1 exclusive came in. We just took the broad brush and went A1 exclusive. And all the smaller parcels under 35 acres became substandard. If they were created legally, they're a buildable site. If they weren't, which quite a few of them are, the illegal land divisions, people doing quick claim deeds, they can't be built on. So we're going to be looking, we have looked at all those. If it has a certified survey map or if it has a house on it, the zoning's being instantly updated. The ones that are questionable, they're going to be put under Farm Preservation 1. It does not allow for a single family house. In order to put a single family house there, the town need to weigh in, and it's going to need to be rezoned. So right now, the A1 exclusive substandard lots, it's only done administratively, and the town doesn't have any say. So they're really interested in that and fleshing out where the future houses could go and which ones are illegal. There's a bunch of definitions that'll change. I'm not going to go through those, but they have changed, like personal storage facilities. That is mini warehouses. So if you look in our ordinance, where is mini warehouses? It's not listed in there except under the definition of personal storage facility. So some of the language has changed. If you take a look at this proposed ordinance, take a look at the definitions first, because it really gives you a clue of what then the rest of the ordinance makes sense.
Real quick though, Roger,
Mm-hmm.
among those definitions, to me the big change was the abandoned uses as far as how.
Oh, yes. I was going to get to
Non-conforming
that
mineral extraction.
with the non-conforming. Yes. That was a huge issue, and the subcommittee has tackled that with the aggregate community in the room and shaking their heads. Yes, it's okay. For the non-conforming sites, there is an issue because non-conforming uses go away in a year. Our current ordinance says, oh, except for mineral extraction sites, they don't apply. Well, that runs contrary to the state statutes. So we said, okay, well, what makes it not abandoned? And so we came up with, you have to place a sign there that says it's a quarry. You have to have a driveway. Instead of just a 40-acre field, you're going to have a driveway there with a gate and a sign that says quarry. So at least people driving past, they know they have an identifier. They also have to submit their reclamation fees annually and not just say, no, we're not doing anything, we're just going to let it silent. No, they have to have a reclamation, which mostly all of them have reclamation plans on file, and they have to pay their annual fees to the DNR. So that's what keeps the ones that are currently out there active. The people that don't do that, they're going to lose their non-conforming status. So, and that was acceptable to the
And that's
aggregate
regardless
industry.
if they're registered back and whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Done.
Yep, it's done. So we're addressing that major issue because there's 150 scattered across, and there's quite a few that, you know, they're cornfields.
Right.
And one day, you know, a backhoe comes in and all of a sudden there's trucks going in and out and blasting occurring. Neighbors don't like it. Standard requirements for all uses. We put some general provisions. We never really had anything for junk, right? We said everything was a salvage yard if you had crap all over your property. One of our major complaints. We put some good language in there to enforce unsightly properties. We did noise limitations, just a requirement to give town officials and the ZLR committee a flavor of what type of decibel levels that we're talking about. If we're with a conditional use permit, we could probably select one of those decibel levels. We have addressed non-conforming mineral extraction sites. Parking's pretty much the same. The highway setbacks are the same. Screening, we revised slightly to current standards to have a good separation, a good buffer between commercial and residential. There are special requirements, and so it's like standard stuff that every one of these special uses need to do. Without, you know, going through the whole conditional use permit. These are just standard things. We have the accessory dwelling units that we talked about. They're going to be limited to 800 square feet and 2 bedrooms. So it is going to be a subordinate living unit, and then people are going to choose. Either the kids go in the big house or the kids go in the small house. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Agricultural entertainment, we did have that in our current ordinance about having event plans over 200 persons. They'll need to be, we didn't have any approval process, but they'll need to be approved by the town and the county. Just specifically, we're looking at emergency service. When the police officer shows up, where does he go on your 40-acre parcel when there's like 1,000 people running around? Sanitary services. And where is everybody going to park other than a side of the road? So those things are going to be addressed. Adult entertainment. We're revising our ordinances up to current standards. They are changing every year with different statutory language that, or different case law that we have to put in there to substantiate why we have an adult entertainment ordinance. So we're revising that once again. If you're having kennels or animal boarding, it needs to be fenced. You got to have them at least 500 feet away from a single family residence. We're finding that right around that 500-foot mark, if you're closer, it's intolerable. People are just really complaining. We have large animal boarding. Basically, you need the fence. Farm residents, pretty much the same as the current ordinance. You have to prove you're a farmer. Domestic fowl and bees, we had significant conversations with the Beekeepers Association and learned a whole bunch about bees, and now you could have bees more, you know, they don't go and sting your neighbor. All they're there is to create honey and find flowers. So they're very disinterested in people. So those limitations.
I want to just interject something on that beekeeping. I thought they'd come in with their fangs out, ready to take us on. And all of a sudden, I remember specifically, Brian or somebody said something to them along the line of, "What do you want?" And I remember those words, "What do you want?" And all of a sudden, it just started to come out, and about 2 hours later, They were smiling, we were smiling, we had our problem resolved, and on we went.
I thought you were
Yeah,
talking about
you
the
know.
bees at first.
I thought that their stingers out.
Seriously, yeah.
The whole process was very interactive, and people that had concerns were allowed to speak, and they had to solve their own issue and see what was tolerable. The aggregate industry
Same
did the
thing.
same thing. The beekeepers, although, it's bees, but they were very passionate about bees.
Absolutely.
I don't think the aggregate industry likes the non-conforming sites any more than we do, because they're sort of rivals who are just fly-by-night operations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just one company that capitalizes on them. That's basically about it. Limited family business, they've expanded because we're always finding small businesses have more than one employee that is not a family member. So we bumped it up to 4. I don't think it's going to make that much difference, but it will allow more people to come in for limited family businesses rather than hiding. Mineral extraction, we have a basic list of standard conditions. We always put those 20 conditions. They're just codified now that they're just standard conditions all the time. Outdoor assembly events, we have some limitations placed on those. Small scale farming, that has been added in the whole process. I guess I'll talk about that now. So with current legislation, under agricultural uses, you could have livestock. Well, we cannot prohibit the number of livestock under agricultural uses. So our 1 animal unit per acre basically conflicts with the current legislation because of CAFO and all the watered down stuff with large animal confinement on small lots. So what we did was instead of just calling everything agricultural uses, we added the term small-scale farming. So on the lots under 35 acres in size, under 16 acres in size, you'll see small-scale farming that has 1 animal unit per acre. The larger lots, 16 acres, they're all going to be controlled by a farm plan. And that's agricultural use. And they'll have a farm plan, they'll have a nutrient management plan where they're going to put all the poop. And so that's how we're kind of working with the legislation that's out there. With some standard conditions and temporary batch plants and asphalt plants. So the districts that we have, all the districts changed basically so we know what the new code is and the old code. We grouped zoning districts were grouped into some categories. Each zoning district has now a purpose statement. Our current ordinance does not, I think only 1 or 2 of the districts actually have purpose statements. And then we updated the land use descriptions to simplify them. So the first category that we have is natural resources and recreational areas, large open spaces. They used to be called conservancy and recreation. They're going to be called natural resource conservancy and recreation. So labels are going to change. It's basically the same thing. You're going to have the open space, and the cool thing about it is that when we adopt this new ordinance, we're adopting new zoning maps, so that all the DNR lands are going to be, instead of A1 exclusive, they're all going to say NRC, conservation. So they are going to have limited uses rather than, I don't know, the state selling them and having something going in there. So they are going to be protected through zoning with the updated map. So that's a really good thing. Recreation is basically going to stay the same. Baseball diamonds, if you want to light the baseball diamonds, you need a conditional use permit. And then we have some information, outdoor events, like if you're going to have a jazz festival once a year and stuff like that in the park, it'll be allowed through a conditional use permit. Farmland preservation, instead of A1 exclusives, we'll have farm preservation. A4, the small lot, is going to be FP1. We reduced it The reason why it's FP1, we reduced it down to 1 acre rather than 5 acres, because all the remnant pieces that we were getting were like 3 or 4 acres, and they didn't meet the A4, which has a minimum acreage of 5 acres. So we trimmed that down. And then the agricultural business is pretty much the same. I'm not going to go through this stuff. The highlights, basically, agricultural entertainment, we used to have 45 days. We knocked that down to 10 days. So if you're having parties more than 10 days on your active farm, you're going to need to get a conditional use permit rather than that 45 days, because you could have a party every single weekend, mostly, and just have it permitted by right now. So we knocked that down. Horse sporting will be permitted by right, and so if you have 35 acres of land, it doesn't matter if you have cows, sheep, or horses. Pretty much doing the same thing. But if you're going to have shows and stuff like that, that's outdoor entertainment. So you're going to need a conditional use permit if you're going to have events and everything. You can have board horses all you want, but if you start having an intense land use such as events, you're going to need to get a conditional use permit. That's about it for the farmland preservation. There are transitional districts, that's like around villages and cities that don't get ag credits, but they're still in the agricultural preservation phase, but they just don't. So we switched out new names. It says agricultural transition rather than A3. And then we get into the large agricultural lots. So we have the rural mixed use, and this is going to be similar to rural homes or A2. It's basically a medium-sized rural lot. It has residential agriculture, and you're going to have some business activities. Basically what you're going to have, single-family house, you're going to have a large barn, and you're going to be doing something in that barn, probably either livestock, agricultural uses, or using it for a business. It's on acreage from 8 to 16 acres. Because we call it mixed use, you could also have other things in conditional use. You could do kenneling. You could do veterinarian clinics. You could also have recreational racetracks on large acreage. We had some issues with racetracks, so we addressed it in the code. What's missing out of the smaller size lots between 18 to 16 acres is quarries, dumping grounds, landfills, salvage recycling centers. We shifted those all into a different zoning category called rural industrial. If these are too intense, we have rural residential that just basically says you get your house, you get your large residential accessory building, and you may be able to do some limited family business, but that's about it. You can't have veterinarian clinics and all the other stuff. We have a larger rural mixed use, 16 to 35 acres. It's pretty much, it's the same as the smaller lot RM zoning district. The only thing that if you have 16 to 35 acres, you could have mineral extraction, temporary asphalt plants, and concrete production. So basically, you could have your mineral extraction sites in A1 exclusive. You could have them on smaller lots down to 16 acres. When it gets under 16 acre lots, they're going to be prohibited. So you're not going to have smaller, you're going to have quarries on larger acreage of land. Then we come down to a little more restrictive rural residential district. It's basically the same as the RH and A2. Basically having single family houses and just having limited family businesses, daycares, schools, churches as conditional use permits. So pretty much stuff that could fit into the neighborhood. There's also a limitation on height of accessory buildings. They're 16 feet in height for the 1 and 2 acre lots. And that's basically getting down to maybe an estate lot. And it's key to note that it's just 1 to 2 acre lots that have this limitation on accessory buildings. As you go up in scale, it gets a little more relaxed. Accessory buildings go up to 35 feet in height, but you still have the same permitted by right and conditional uses. And then you have the 1 animal unit per acre, and that's covered under small scale farming. Then you have, you go up in size 4 to 8 acres, just like the rural homes, so that we control our housing density rights. 8 to 16 acres, basically, you're going to have a selection between rural residential and rural mixed use, and that's just going to be controlling the density or controlling the intensity of what the land uses could potentially have. So if you have the more restrictive rural residential, you're only going to have 1 animal unit per acre. If you have RM, you're going to be looking at a farm plan and controlling your animal units through manure management. The more restrictive R8 doesn't allow for you to use old barns for recreational equipment or have agricultural entertainment. The more restrictive R8 doesn't allow kennels, large confinement, vet clinics, sanitary fixtures, and ag buildings. So, and then the commercial activity is just limited to limited family businesses. So it just reduces the intensity. Then you have your single family lots for your subdivisions. We took out pretty much the same thing. Instead of R1, it's going to be called SFR 08. And the 08's for 8,000, that's the minimum lot size. Instead of having R1, R2, and R3, the only difference was the rear setback. R1 was 50, R2 was 35, R3 was 25. We had some rezoning petitions that came in from R1 to R3, and everybody probably went, what the heck are they doing? But they're reducing their rear setback so they could do their rear yard addition. So we chopped the SFR 08 has a minimum setback of 25 feet. So we just standardized that whole thing. We have the 1 to 2 acre lot sizes. We had some towns say, hey, we want to have subdivisions that are unsored that will comply with water quality. So 1 to 2 acres in size, really nice. And we don't want animals running around or anything. We just want the subdivision lot, the single family house, the small accessory building, and that's it. If it's over 1 acre in size, you would be, let's see, SFR 1 does not permit small scale farming. It doesn't, okay, this doesn't allow a limited family business. So you get your house, you get your small accessory building, that's it. Then there was a concern about estates. You know, hey, we want to have a subdivision with 2 to 4 acre lot sizes, but we don't want critters running around or any limited family businesses. We just want the house and the small building and have a nice estate. So we have a zoning district for that. We have our duplex zoning district. We have our multifamily district. The only thing, we just revised to have dwelling units per acre rather than units per square foot. So we just revised that. Other than that, pretty much the same. The hamlet zoning districts is pretty cool. Brian Standing would be able to talk about this better than I, but there's going to be 2 major areas. You're going to have a hamlet residential, which is primarily geared to the residential core of a hamlet, and then you're going to have the mixed use area where there's a mix mash of everything. that there's a bar, there's a multifamily unit, there's a store, there's a single family house, there's a multifamily unit, and all that. We want that to work, and there's a lot of flexibilities built into that hamlet stuff.
Roger?
Yes.
Before you leave the residential districts, what if somebody were proposing a subdivision, I don't know what the lot sizes would be, besides it's some sort of conservation subdivision, and they wanted to do community septic, is that possible?
Oh yeah, under the standard single family zoning district.
And would that be considered sewered or unsewered if it's community septic?
It would still be unsewered. So they would probably go to SFR 08. They would have minimum size 20,000 square feet, and basically house in a small single family or a house in a small accessory building, and that's it. Hamlet. I'm not going to go that much in detail. Commercial zoning districts, we're going to have 3 commercial. There's the limited commercial that we always have, that basically you have a building on 5 acres and they're shoving the business activity inside. If you want outdoor storage, you need a conditional use permit. The general commercial, basically, it's all commercial activity inside. So you're going to have retail, offices, daycare centers, vet clinics. If you're expanding outside, there are provisions under a conditional use permit. Then you get to heavy commercial, you're going to have indoor and outdoor commercial activity. We do have to have a area for adult bookstores, so the heavy commercial, but that is subject to limitations. But basically, auto repair, indoor, outdoor sales is going to go into heavy commercial. I'm not going to go into detail. Then the new district, rural industrial. Rural industrial, you are going to have the permitted by right offices, indoor, outdoor storage, and light industrial. But all the intense land uses have been placed here to get them out of the A2, the A1 exclusive, the A1 zoning district had them all in there. So you could see that dumping grounds, incinerators, mineral extraction, salvage yards, recycling centers, sewer plants, all are on that. And they are limited. Any new ones will need to meet the 16-acre minimum lot size. So we are kind of, if you're going to create a intense land use, you're going to need some acreage and not try to stuff a salvage yard onto a 1-acre lot. The manufacturing and industrial zoning district, that pretty much stayed the same. It's pretty much intense industrial.
Okay.
There are special uses. There's the planned unit development that's staying pretty much the same. We've added a new zoning district, UTR. That's for all the remnant parcels that don't fit. We have the 30-foot wide strips that are 300 feet long, and we don't know what to zone them, so they're going into the UTR. And the little pieces of the 40-acre that the remnants on the other side of the road, that's all going to be UTR. We are going to have a choice of overlay districts. There's the standard ones that we have already, adult entertainment and the historic overlay district. We're also going to have an option here for towns, the natural resource identification. And this is important for towns. Some towns want to preserve their hilltops. So they could come in with an overlay district and say, if you're rezoning anything on the hilltops, you're going to need to come in with a site plan first and show us exactly what you're doing. So that's what the natural resource identification, it requires people to come in with a site plan. Give us a little more information on just zoning your property. A lot of people do that. Some people are reluctant, but that if the town chooses to do that, it's another option in their toolbox. The transfer of development rights, that's pretty much the same, sending and receiving areas. And that's pretty much it. We have a wonderful website that has the ordinance. It has this summary that I just went through. There's matrices showing zoning districts and land uses and what's permitted by right and what's conditional use. So it's a matrix that you could take a look at all the stuff. We have zoning district fact sheets that are already there. We have special requirements for particular land use. There's links all over the place, the hyperlinks that will put you into specific zoning ordinances. The actual zoning ordinance itself, you click on a lot of stuff and it takes you right to the site. It's all bookmarked and everything like that. We do have an interactive, well, it's updated now. This is an old one. We have online mapping. So you could click on it. It's just like DCI map. It's only the zoning districts. You zoom down and it'll give you the proposed zoning district and your actual existing zoning district. We all have draft town maps of all the towns already. And then if you wanted to take a look at how this whole thing was created, we have this project development area that has all the archives of everything that the subcommittee has done.
Very good.
And that is basically the upcoming town meetings, and you can see that we have been doing our due diligence and going out to the towns and making it happen.
Questions for Roger?
I just want to say that the whole community planning has done a hell of a job helping the committee and working through the issues. And then we've had a few issues, no question about that. But I think it's evident in the users, i.e. the beekeepers and the road builders and the rest of them who have been in here and the realtors. They can see that. So that's really good news. And I'd like to hear how the town meetings are going. Are you happy with
Very
them?
well. I checked in with the town clerk and she said, it made sense. It really made sense. The improvements that were done, the reasons why things were changed, all made sense. And she said that somebody put a lot of time into this. And I said, well, that was the subcommittee because, we dreamt up suggestions and they hammered it all out and chose the best option. And one item that you may not know, Supervisor Miles, is that Mark Hazelbaker took a look at our entire ordinance.
Right.
And he was highly impressed with it. He gave some thoughtful suggestions. They were very minor, but we are looking at including those. And he also suggested to the Towns Association to use this as their model ordinance for the towns that opted out. The executive committee chose not to do that.
Interesting.
So that's, I'll leave you on a happy note.
Yes. Well, thank you for that very thorough presentation. Thanks for all the work. And entertain a motion to adjourn.
Supervisor Kolar, if I can just point out the work that Brian and Roger and
Yeah.
Majid, and as well as Pam and Kurt's even got some meeting schedules now scheduled as well. The outreach they're doing is extensive, and the work that they're undertaking, have undertaken, but now the outreach and the hand-holding and the answering of questions, and this is the phase one of it, and the phase two will be the going through the mapping with the towns, ultimately probably parcel by parcel, working with the towns. It's a major effort, but most of these initial meetings with the towns will probably be completed in February, and then the mapping part of it will begin. And it's just a large volume of work, and the staff have really gotten behind it. They're working well together, and it's great to see, and they're really accomplishing quite a bit. So, credit goes to Roger and the planners for their efforts on it, and just wanted to make sure that that was out there for your awareness of the great work they're doing.
And much appreciated. Thank you.
Our goal is to not have anyone at the public hearing.
Yes. On adjournment, all in favor, aye? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Very good.